Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Buddy Martin Show. That would be me tonight on a Wednesday night. Glad to be with you here tonight. Hope your day went well. Mine went a little better, but not too much. And hope life is treating you good. Coming up with the program, we got a treat with Scott Carter, one of our favorite guys who gets around, knows a lot what's happening in Florida. A lot of questions about the program. And then we're going to have David Moulton will step in here a little later on. David, of course, is a knowledgeable guy, does a talk show out right there in Florida and Jacksonville and Miller and Moulton. He's very knowledgeable. And then our buddy who does his SEC Sideline Show, Rob Browne will join us tonight. Rob always gets good stuff. He talks to people every day. So stay tuned tonight. Let's talk about what's realistic about their projections. And the question on the floor is, if Florida is better this fall, we'll be able to tell it. You know what I mean? And we'll talk about that tonight. We had fun with it last night trying to pick the season. It's getting to be those way too early deals, which we always like to do. But stand by while we go and find the open and bring Scott Carter in here. Always one of our favorite shows to have Scotty.
Buddy Martin, call him up and tell him what you're thinking, but be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Good evening. I'm Buddy Martin. The show tonight features Scott Carter from the Gators.com. And as I said earlier, we'll have Rob Browne from Sidelines, SEC Sidelines, and David Moulton. Allie Peak was coming on, but she had an emergency at the house. Somebody got a medical emergency, not her kids, and she had to beg off tonight. But that's okay. We hope things are okay at the house. Let's go right to the Orange and Blue Room and talk to this guy is a veteran scribe. He's knowledgeable. I noticed he was among those people, VIPs invited to Spurrier's Gridiron Grill the other night, and we talked about it a lot. How cool was it to have all those writers out there at Spurrier's, and a tribute to Steve that so many people would come and support him. And someone told me last night, well, Freddie Weeby told me, it was his favorite thing of the whole third anniversary party, having that group of 18, 20 people there like Scott Carter. And it's always fun to be with the head ball coach, isn't it, Scott? Good evening. Got to get your ears on here. There we go. You got time. That's all right. We'll let you take your time and get going. Meanwhile, we'll talk about a couple of things here. That's one of our favorite tweeters is Kevin Brockaway, and he's always out there, and he gives you lots of scraps and stuff. And he has stuff, and he mentioned today, I thought this was interesting, that what happens on the field is that Montrell Johnson was still not practicing, but was spotted running hard on the treadmill in the training room. Johnson remains week to week after getting knee scoped in the first week of camp. Now, we know that's not a new story, but the progress of Montrell certainly is a big story. And we had Dr. Pete Indelicato on the other night talking about these kinds of injuries. And he said there's a tendency to rush them back. And if you rush them back, you're going to be asking for problems. And speaking of problems, Scott, did you ever get it worked out? All right. I tell you what, Scott, why don't you log off and come back on and we'll get you, okay? And be sure to hit exit, but yes on the exit. All right, Scott Carter. It happens a lot to us all. How you doing tonight? We're going to get a few of your comments, get your thoughts on this. The gremlins always find you, don't you? No matter what you do and who you are and how hard you try, it's just always something that seems to go wrong. But that's okay. We deal with it, and I hope you deal with it. And I ask you folks to be patient with us as we go to the comments tonight. Always love having your chat comments on there. Let's see who's up there. Uh, Michael Burton, always good to see Michael. Michael always has a cheery attitude, big Gator fan, and love hearing from him. And he started out the program. Leadoff batter tonight. Here's a guy that we haven't talked to in a long time, a special friend, a guy who's been with us since we started this program. And he has been loyal to the end, and he's a great Gator fan and someone that I've always enjoyed. And he has his own show now, I believe, Alex Perez. Alex, good evening to you, my friend. I hope things are going all right with you. Here's a new guy that we're just starting, no kin to me, but a guy that's on here almost every night and checking out. Love to you to come on and make your comments and give us your thoughts. Shane Matthews does a great job of reading his text. We don't have the text, but we have this, which he doesn't, which is people weighing in and saying good evening. Now, here's somebody that for a long time was the first one on the air every night. I don't know how she did it, but she was amazing. Becky Carlisle. Becky Carlisle's been a loyal Gator fan, and she's somebody. Let's see if we can go get Scott and try him now. Maybe he's knocking at the door. All right, Scott, my boy, how you doing? I know what's going on. I know what's going on. I don't know if this is a bad link on my part or what, but let me see if I can fix that for you. I'll resend you a link and we'll try that one, all right, and see if we can get a better one. Let's go up here and do this. Get this link for Scott. Hope you're well. The things went well for you today. I'm not sure what all was going on today because I've been out and about dealing with lawyers and real estate people and doctors and what have you. That's always a fun day, right? When you get to do that. But you got to do it. And will say I've got some great friends up here in Panama City who are doctors. And let me shoot a shout out to a few of them, as a matter of fact, here. While I get to this particular, let's see here, do a new window and do a Gmail and do it to Scott Carter. Let's see, here is this. This is always fun. All right, let's go. Here you go, Scott Carter. And link. All right, we're going to put this on here. And Scott, if for some reason we don't get this, call me on the phone and we'll talk. All right. And we'll talk. Via the old fashioned way if we can, if we have to. All right. Let's see if we can do this now. Here it is. So Scott, how's your day going, folks? Doing good? Yeah. All right. There we go. I'm doing good. I talked about this last night on the phone. I always love random meetings of people. And I love the fact that when I had two gentlemen last night trying to put in a new piece of furniture we got, we've been saving for it forever. We needed a sort of small sofa, olive seat. We finally got enough money for it and got it in here. And it wasn't cheap. And the people from Rooms to Go came up. First thing they did was they called on the call box. And, it's a prejudice that's built in. But when we hear an accent or something, we hear someone who's struggling with the language, we automatically assume they're not going to get it right. Well, pretty soon I gave them the directions, which, by the way, about half the people can't seem to get straight directions when they come up. Let's go try one more time with Scott. I'll put this through. Scott, I hope this is going to be the magic touch. Let's try one more time, Scott. Are we there, buddy? Are you there, Scott? He's still trying. Anyway, the guy who who came up. They're pure Jamaicans, and they brought this piece in. And you always worry when you get a new piece of furniture, it's going to be right. And we were concerned about them getting it right. They were absolute consummate professionals. They got that box ripped off. Every little detail was right. They got the sofa put in the right place. It was beautifully done. They had about 20 minutes. And as we're talking, one of them asked me, he said, what do you do? I said, well, I'm a writer and I do these books and stuff and I do this show. He said, well, what's your address on the show? I said, well, it's YouTube. He said, let me get it down. So he got it down and I said, come on the show sometime and say a shout out. He said, okay, I will. Well, you figure you never will. Sure enough, last night he logged on and there he was, my buddy from Rooms to Go. He has his own show, his own football, but not American football. Just great people. So I'm always thrilled to make those kind of new friends and connections on this program. And I'm thrilled about you too. And I would be thrilled if I could get Scott. I hope it's not going to be the kind of night it is. Let's go back and say, yeah, you're right, Michael. The Gremlins that do it. There's no question about it. Let's see. Hello, love your show. Thank you. That's quite a name you got there. JLB has this IQ of alternative. Who else that is? And David, there he is, the doc. I got to say something about this guy. I had a need for a doctor the other night, and I didn't want to go to the clinic. I didn't want to go to, I didn't want to go to those health clinics. I didn't want to go to the emergency room because I wasn't sure it was anything serious, but I needed to get some checked out. This man, who's a big Gator fan, on the show every night, and I wasn't even going to mention it, but I'm going to tonight because he is such a special friend. Made sure, about my head, okay? I'll just say it. And you never know when you're taking blood thinner what kind of problem that could be. So my son Brendan made sure that I got some medical attention. So he saw to it that someone came to my condo, okay? To my condo. Now think about this. This is in time when you're lucky if you can even get somebody on the phone. Have you tried lately? And see if you can get them to give you some kind of appointment or whatever. He sent someone, a friend of his, a woman who is a nurse, fantastic lady, over to my house. She lived 15 minutes away and came in and checked me out and says, looks okay to me, but I'm going to call you back later and see how you are, make sure you're sleeping okay, whatever. She did that. I mean, I was so grateful for that. You don't get that kind of service anywhere. You couldn't buy it, but to have someone like that. Let's see if we can get Scott on the phone. Scott, can we talk to you on the phone?
Hey, buddy. Having some technical difficulties, I guess, here in the office.
I don't know if it's you or me or what, but we'll overcome it, Scott. We'll overcome it. So thank you for keeping on. I hope the link's not bad. I resent it. Did you get it okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine. I don't know. You probably can't see me, obviously, but
well, I've got you on the phone now.
Yeah.
If you want to try one more time and log back in, we'll try it. Otherwise, let's just talk.
Yeah, let's just talk.
Like old-fashioned talk radio, Scott. You remember that?
That's right, man. Sometimes that's the easiest, even still with all the tools we have.
That's right. Yeah, sometimes it's better to go old school, right? And well, a couple of things I wanted to ask you if I can get to my copy now. I have so many things on my screen. I saw a note today from Brockway that Montreal's still on the sidelines, which didn't surprise me, and that there's no more information day to day. Do you know anything there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just kind of he's obviously still hobbled with the knee. I mean, even when you get scoped, even a non-serious issue like his was, you don't just hop back out on the field. It's a process. So they're not going to risk anything there with Montreal because I think they have depth there at the position they're comfortable with, and Trayon Webb and Jaden Ball and Katie Daniels and Jacoby Jackson, who had a good scrimmage on Saturday. So Billy said it's really they're going to go at Montreal's pace. So he's going to control kind of when he feels like he's ready. So I expect, I don't know where it's going to be come Miami. That's still, 17 days away. But, he's still not there yet.
Yeah, I had Dr. Pete on earlier today talking about that situation with how these hammies go and how these injuries go. His, of course, not being a hammy. And there's peculiarities to each injury. His is obviously different. I think the thing that when Shane was talking the other day, I was on the show Monday. You got a really talented stable of running backs. We all know. You mentioned Kenny Daniels, and on and on and on. There's really some talented guys, Webb, etc. Jaden Ball, I think, is my favorite, but there's really some good talent. But there are other things besides toting the rock. You got to be able to protect the quarterback, and that is certainly something that you that you have to be considered. So I'm sure they'll split by playing time, but there's no reason to think that maybe they'll play it by committee. Who knows? And maybe hold him out. So
yeah, I think everything's on the table there. I don't think they're really in a rush with it. I do think as I said, they're comfortable with what they have. They recruited well there. And, I remember watching the spring game. Jaden Ball, to me, was the guy who got me most excited in that game just because you didn't know much about him. And he instantly made some plays. And, Katie Daniels showed a burst in the scrimmage last Saturday that opened some eyes. So they're young, they're hungry. You just hope that Montreal is able to get back because he's such a good guy, and he's really had a good career, and you don't want to see him hobbled too much his final season or have to redshirt because I think he's a big piece of their puzzle if they're going to have a good season. The worst thing he can do is rush a guy back, and then he's out for most of the year. So if he has to sit for a game or two, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world, but I'm sure they're still hoping to get him back as soon as they can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Scott, can you? I don't have any information on this, and you may not either. But there's been a lot of talk about the provost, what's happened there, and the doctor, and the story today that former UF provost Joe Glover is returning to his post less than a month after being at Arizona, I guess. First major shakeup in the university leadership since Kent Fox returned. What is going on in the president's office?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I haven't been plugged online today, so I didn't even know that news until you just said it. Obviously, I'm familiar with Glover's name. I mean, this is a guy who's been here for, I think, decades before he recently left. And it looks to me like, Buddy, just from I'm not over in the president's office, and I don't mingle over there very often. I obviously know Dr. Fox. I've met him and talked to him many times. Same with Ben Sass. Obviously, you saw the news this week about Ben Sass with some of the, caused some headlines. So yeah. It looks to me like if I'm just reading the tea leaves, it looks like there's a transition there that is a shakeup. I mean, it's just basically what you call it. I mean, it's like a new guy who came in 17 months is out, and now they're putting the old posse back together right now, it looks like. So yeah. I don't know what the deeper issues are or what the politics going on there, but obviously something's going on to cause a public transition here that usually you don't see too often at UF. That's one thing I've noticed over the years. I mean, they usually are pretty tight at the administrative level, so it's interesting to kind of see it play out like this. Yeah.
You folks have Scott Carter for another few minutes. If you have any specific questions, he gets to go to practice. I'm sure you can tell us a couple of things. If you'd like to go ahead and send him the message boards, I relay them to him. And meanwhile, we will talk about a couple other things that while we're waiting for those questions. I had a sort of premise the other day. Was really interesting. It worked out, and that is that if Florida is better, given that the Gators have arguably the most difficult schedule in the history of college football or whatever, then how are they going to prove it? Because how do you prove you're better? Although you could be better and you're better, but you can't show it in the wins and losses. It's going to be hard. Florida may well beat that. They won't have much to beat. They'll just get 500 and go to a bowl, and they would have the opportunity to be better. But the thing is, the whole league seems to be with the mammoth size of it, the long schedule, the difficulty of it, and of course, always injuries. Billy's got his work cut out. But if I said to you, Scott, forget about the record, what you've seen so far, what we're hearing about the bodies changing and the workouts and the attitude, would you say you think this will be a better football team?
I do believe it's going to be a better team. I think, I've told a lot of people this when they ask. I see more players out there this year than the last 3 or 4 really that look like Gators from what I remember. We all remember them, right? You remember guys like Brandon Spikes and Joe Hayden and Tim Tebow and Javon Curse, and just players when you see them, you're like, well, this is a difference maker. I see finally some of those guys starting to come back. I don't know if there's enough of them to make a huge turnaround in 2024. I mean, there's still freshmen, and even some of those guys I just mentioned, they didn't come on the campus and earn All-American honors their first year. But you can even go back, buddy, just even the last decade. Guys like Pitts, Jared Davis, Keanu O'Neal. I mean, those guys you knew were going to play in the NFL for a decade after they got done with college, almost as soon as they showed up here. I just haven't seen a lot of those guys in the last 3 or 4 years. But this year, I'm starting to see an influx of more of those type of players. So obviously, that's the biggest thing. I mean, you got to have players to have good teams. I mean, you can have great coaching, you can have great stadium, great fans. If you don't have the players, it doesn't matter. So they're getting more of those players. And then I think Billy Napier, his culture is firmly established now. I think the guys he has on the roster, just from being around them, talking to people in the building, they're a confident bunch over there. I mean, they think they're going to be better. So they like where they are as a program. They like who they have on the roster. They like the staff. So now it's a matter of going out and, proving it. And you're right, buddy. I mean, they could go 6-6 or something this year and it not be a significant improvement in the win-loss record and be a better team. And what's that going to look like? Well, it's going to look like they're going to be in a lot of these games that people aren't going to give them a lot of chance in. It's going to be cutting down on some of the mental errors that we've seen. It's going to be, making more plays, forcing more turnovers, making more explosive plays. So it's a lot of things that are going to add up at the end to if that comes to fruition. And it, like you said, it may not be a huge showing in a win-loss record, but I just hope that it's a better product. And I really do think it's important. They need to get back to a bowl game and, hopefully have a winning season. I mean, you just don't expect Florida to be sitting here talking about 3 straight losing seasons. That's just not what we're accustomed to. So it's a big year. We all know that. I'm just ready for it to start, man, because I'm about tired of evaluating or wondering what's going to happen. I'm ready to see what's going to happen.
Somebody. And the little, you want to say regress or progress. And by the way, we'll try to bring David Moulton on next, see what happens. Hopefully his audio is working. If the little things like for the first time since 1989, Florida then got one single vote in the AP top 25. I don't know what that means, but it's not good, So
it's just where the program is. Like they were picked to finish 12th in the SEC. I mean, I realize there's 2 more teams this year, but even going back to the 14-team league, I don't remember the Gators ever being picked 10th. I mean, so it's just where the perception of the program is right now. I saw your old buddy, Danny Sheridan, he's been around forever. I saw him have them like the 20th worst FBS team has
Yeah.
this season. So
Yeah.
they don't have a lot of love from the outside. Obviously, that's been a big talking point inside this camp. And they're not expected. They're just going about their business and trying to, as they like to say, prove themselves right.
Exactly.
But obviously, in the end, that also means proving others wrong. And I think that's a lot of their motivation right now. So, hey, sometimes that works.
Scott Carter, 40gators.com. Well, let's just see. I'm going to have to see where David Moulton's audio is working or not. He's up. And if he's not, I'll have to hang up on you and call him back. Are you there, David?
I'm here, buddy.
Oh, my goodness. We got audio. Holy mackerel. I had about everything that could possibly go wrong this week in my life go wrong. That's one of the few times I didn't. So it's good to see you. Say hello to Scott Carter.
Hey, Scott. How are you?
Hope Buddy's night just turned around for the better.
There you go.
Yeah, well, David will see to that. He always makes me feel better. So he's for sure. Anyway, just having a brief, while you're here, I'll let you go, Scott. But hold on one second. We're just talking about how do you measure progress, and and it's of course on the field, naturally the wins and losses. But as you said this, David, I think a couple of times they can have a better team and have just as bad a record this year. And
yeah. I mean, this is the hardest schedule in recent memory that any Gator coaches have, but it's certainly Billy's hardest schedule. So, yeah, they could be a better team and have the same or worse record. The hope is they'll have a better record, even if it's slight. The Miami game is big. For what it's worth, and Scott, I don't know if you agree with this, but, I think Phil Steele knows a little something about college football. I think he does his homework. And so this is what the Gators are going up against Miami. According to Phil Steele, in the trenches, Miami is the 7th best offensive line in the country. They have the 12th best defensive line. Okay, Miami's linebacking core is top 15. The Gators don't have a unit that's in the top 15 in the country, according to Phil Steele. Now, I will say, I think if Florida is going to win, it's going to have to be Mertz throwing the ball, because the weakest unit on Miami is their secondary. And Phil Steele has them ranked 37th in the country. So to me, that's where Miami's vulnerable. Miami, on paper, is better in the trenches than Florida. Tough to win a game against an opponent who's supposedly better than you in the trenches. How do you do it? Make big plays on offense. Miami's secondary is vulnerable. All right. Home field, the whole deal. Miami, they don't win a lot of big games on the road, recently. But I'm just saying, a lot of focus on the Miami game, a lot of focus on this Gators team. I think Mertz, remember 2 years ago, the home opener against Utah, when Richardson and company kind of stole the game, made big plays in the passing game on offense and stole the game, beat a team that at the end of the year you went, wow, that team was better than them. Well, they weren't that night. Okay. And that's, to me, what the Gators have to do, buddy. They've got Mertz, the senior quarterback, the leader, the whole deal. Things are better. Well, okay. Miami secondary is vulnerable. Guys, give them enough time. Let's exploit it.
You answered some questions there. People were just asking about how to evaluate the offensive and defensive line. And I couldn't, but you did get a good source to do that. And obviously that's the question. And then with the injury, Scott, this week to the defensive lineman, that didn't exactly help, because he plays nose and he plays the defensive end, although he wasn't the starter. How bad did that hurt?
Yeah, I mean, Jamari Lyons is a young player who they were hoping to, take a growth spurt this year in terms of production. So it was definitely a loss. I don't think it's one that they can't overcome, but to do that, you're going to have to, mix some players up maybe that you weren't expecting, like Sapp and Slackman. And I've always thought one of the enigmas on the roster is obviously Desmond Watson. If he's ever going to blossom, he's only got a few months to do it. He could really take care of a lot of concerns if he had a breakout season there behind Caleb Banks. But losing lines were hurts, and I do think they have enough young talent with, Kelby Collins and some of the other guys to have enough bodies there in depth. But Lyons is a little bit ahead of some of the guys that are below him on the depth chart.
Yeah.
And then, to kind of piggyback off what David was talking about, the Miami game, I've been following the Gators for decades. I've been around the program now. This is, believe it or not, it's my 15th season. And I can't, I don't remember just one game being, to me, as important as Miami this year because of everything that's kind of going around it. I think it's a winnable game, but Miami on paper is certainly, they're favored to win. I mean, I think they're, 2.5 points favorites in the Swamp. You just don't see that very often, teams being favored against Florida at home. It just speaks to where the recent history is. And I think to beat them, you're going to have to do it a lot like David said. They're going to have to talk or make some big plays. They're going to have to get some production from these young players that we're talking about up front, defensively and offensive line. But it's just we all know if they win that game, it's just such a huge boost of confidence. And then we know if they lose the game, the noise is just going to be out of control. So it's just such an important season opener. And I personally can't wait for it to get here because it's one of the more interesting openers of any of them in the country this year.
Yeah. And David, you can jump in here, and I'll let Scott go with this one. We get a lot of coaches' questions. I think we're hoping to see that. Tell me if I'm right, of all the coaching changes as a group, the defensive side seems to have improved its stature a lot with what I'm reading. The defensive coordinator and an executive head coach and, the D-line, it seems to be very – talk about those defensive coaches, Scott, since you've seen them. What's the buzz about that?
Well, Jared Chapman has kind of been one of the the stars of camp because when all the media comes out there, they're all intrigued with his intensity of practice. And, you've probably seen a lot of those videos and stuff. He's added, I think, an element that maybe the coaching staff needed, just a guy who's kind of an old school, in-your-face coach. There seems to be less and less of those nowadays because of just the culture of the sport's changed. The modern college football player is somewhat different than even 5 or 10 years ago. But Gerald Chapman is definitely bringing some heat out there. I think accountability is huge in his eyes, and he's pushing that group to emerge and make a statement because if this Florida team is going to surprise us, if it's going to win some of these games that people are saying they have no chance, they're going to have big moments out of guys up front, offensive and defensive linemen. We all know, guys, that's where the games are won or lost more often than not. And Florida, certainly on the defensive line, has been pushed around the last since 2020. You look at the defensive statistics in the last 4 seasons. They are not they're historically on the bad side. So I do like Ron Roberts in that group, too. Another guy, I think he's going to help Boston Armstrong call the defense, and that's going to help just a guy who's not going to be overwhelmed by anything he sees. He's been around the game for so long. So I like the changes they made there on that staff, and you see him out there at practice. It's a different vibe with the coaching staff.
Well, we appreciate Scott Carter sticking in there and hanging in, and even though we had the audio problems and we got it in, we appreciate it, Scott. Well, hope to catch up to you soon, and we got a lot to talk about before the first game coming up. All right?
Yeah, we do. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you very much. I want to say happy birthday to Tim Tebow. And I don't even know how old he is, David. We could probably figure it out. And then my buddy Jeffrey Melton, who's got a big one coming up in a couple of weeks. I'll be going to his birthday party in Gainesville. Jeffrey's back after his soiree over to Europe. Boy, what a life day he's got. Great stuff. But I just want to say one thing. In a pinch, when you really need somebody to help you over a problem, whatever it may be, medical or legal, whatever, when you got somebody you can trust and they go out of their way, I mean, I'm nobody. Don't get me wrong. It's so great to have people like my friend locally here. I mentioned the doctor. To have Jeffrey Melton on a legal matter I had to deal with. This really upset me. When you got someone like that on your side, man, that's special to have friends like that, David.
Oh, there's no question. We all find out when things are not going our way.
Mm-hmm.
Who's there for us, and also when you can't do something for someone and they still want to be in your life, those are the people that you keep close to you.
Great point. It's a great point. Let me just say, by the way, this program is brought to you by Jeffrey Melton. I have my friends, by the way, calling me up, David, saying, could you give me Jeffrey's number? I'd like to get him to sponsor my show. Yeah, like, okay, let me hand those numbers out to you right here. But anyway, he does enough. Anyway, Jeffrey, I talked to him today. He's doing well. He's got lots to talk about. He's excited. He, of course, has got the new law office open down in Williston, Gainesville, Ocala, and Lake City. And he's got a nice little thing going there and trustworthy, and lots of money he gets puts back in the University of Florida. So if you need legal help, I recommend him. He's a pro. Jeffrey Melton. He won't back down. Melton Law. All right, let's see. David, we're going to get Rob Browne in here a minute. Saturday. Before that, I want to talk about throwing the ball down the field.
Mm-hmm.
I do this show with Shane Matthews every Monday night, and then his show on Tuesday. And he emphasized this point a lot this year. To quote Shane, throw the damn ball down the field. And he's not only once or twice, I mean like 8 or 12 or 15 times. He's really big on that. And of course, it does stretch the defense. Mertz has got a good enough arm to do that. Based on what you heard, seen, and whatever, do you think Florida will throw more deep balls this year?
I do. I think that part of the offense last year, first off, they were a little conservative with the new quarterback and the new system. And I thought that, they opened it up as the season went on. Secondly, I think it became apparent to Billy that the defense needed protecting. So what you don't want to have is short series. You want to, matriculate the ball, as Hank Stram like to say, down the field and keep your defense off the field. So I think that, you end up calling plays in a conservative nature because you're trying to do more than just move the ball. You're trying to also protect your defense, and, his special teams weren't consistent either. So I think this year he'll have more confidence and more faith in everybody. He'll have a ton of confidence in Mertz from the get-go. They are returning some talent at the receiver position. Also, they added a couple transfers to it. Now, you could argue their best one's playing for the Niners. I agree, but still, I think they will be more aggressive. I think they know they have to be. I mean, come on, you can't tackle this league and this schedule and coach, conservatively. Not anymore. If you're building something, also, from what I understand, Napier doesn't think he's an underdog to Miami.
No, he does.
Napier doesn't think he's an underdog to too many teams on his schedule. So then why be conservative? Get in there and, let's go. Let's have at it. And I'll say it again. Miami's biggest weakness is in the secondary. And so I think Florida has to attack it.
Yeah. Is Miami being made more than they are? Well, you read the prognosis from David Steele. A lot of people I know thinking, when did Miami become Alabama? They're not a top-tier team.
Well, I'll say this. If they hadn't had the recent lack of success that they've had, they do remind me an awful lot of what Norville did at Florida State. Mike's first 2 years, he didn't really get it going. Mario's first 2 years, he hasn't gotten it going.
And Urban's first 2 years, and Urban. And Napier's first 2 years, he didn't get it going either. So,
well, I understand, but if you look at Miami in terms of, remember what Florida State did from year 2 to year 3 in terms of their talent, hitting the portal as successfully as they did on top of recruiting. Okay, Mario really has done that, buddy, at Miami. Now, we don't believe in him and them because he and they haven't done it.
Right.
But on paper, they bear to me a lot of similarities to how Florida State looked 2 years ago, heading into year 3, in which you go, wow, I know these guys haven't won in a while, but there's some real talent here. And that is Miami. I mean, we're not talking about top units in the ACC. We're talking about top 10 units nationally, top 15 units nationally at quarterback, running back, receiver, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker. I mean, if this team, and also they only play one ranked team on their schedule right now, preseason top 25, and that's Florida State. I mean, if he doesn't win a minimum of 9 games, Miami faithful are going to be like, we've got the wrong coach.
So good evening to Rob Browne from the SEC sidelines. David Moulton, you know him. Ask him to step in tonight. Alex,
See you, Rob.
Hey. Before I go, let me just say thank you to my sponsor, the TitanMR.com. They're a sponsor of this program every night. We appreciate that. It's a great place to get an MRI if you want a deal. And nobody likes to go have an MRI, especially if you haven't got any insurance, especially if it takes up your valuable time. David Moulton can't leave in the morning from his job and go get an MRI. So this people at Titan up in Gainesville will customize a appointment night, weekend, whatever you need, so you don't have to lose your time with your job. And secondly, if you don't have insurance, it's kind of scary, but they're priced at a point where they can do this and you can do it. You can take your cash or a card and pay them and wait for your insurance, whatever. Those are 2 things. And lastly, who likes to crawl up inside there, Rob, and get an MRI, that little bitty space? Nobody I know. And they are all working on that too. They give you a better experience so you won't be claustrophobic. So TitanMRI.com, Rob Browne. David, you would have liked this conversation they had this morning on their show, Rob's show he does in the morning. And it's after. What time is your show over, Dave?
8 to 9 Central, Monday through Friday.
Dave, what time his show is over?
My show's 6 to 10 Eastern, so our shows overlap.
Where
are you based out of, David?
I'm in Jacksonville. My co-host is in Fort Myers, so we're on 5 markets, 4 of them in Florida.
Now, are y'all mainly Gators, Seminoles, or all? And any Miami talk at all? Just curious.
Oh yeah, especially because of the high-profile opener. Yeah, a lot of people have had this game circled. Even people who are not Gators and Canes fans have had this game circled for a while. It's sexy.
And David, so you know, spent a lot of years at Fort Myers and Naples, and extremely popular show there. I used to live there and listen to it. He knows I'm a big fan of his, and now he's up North Florida. It's a little different territory, but he knows his stuff, and he also just works in college football. I don't know what your job is this year, but he goes around the country to the press boxes, and he works with Gary, and he does some golf at one time, right? And am I missing some pro football, David? What am I missing?
Just we're all grinding, buddy. We're all trying to make a living.
Yeah.
So,
David, are you going to stay in the South, or are you going to go do the Big Ten stuff with Gary Danielson?
No, so 18 years in the SEC, but yeah, we're headed to the Big Ten. I used to fly in and out of Atlanta basically to every game. This year it's going to be a lot of O'Hare.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and the Big Ten taking that Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson. Isn't Ohio State playing Akron or someone like that early?
Our first game is Akron, a 51-point underdog at Ohio State. And all the years we were in the SEC, for the most part, CBS didn't have games week 1 and week 2. They contractually couldn't have an SEC game because the contract went all the way back to when CBS had the U.S. Open tennis, and it was never amended. So the only way CBS could get a game week 1 or week 2 was it to be either non-SEC or have ESPN have so many games they'd be willing to sell one off.
Wow. Yeah, it's going to be strange because kids have grown up. CBS, in the early 80s, CBS started. '83. I remember they were doing games, but
Oh yes, they've been doing college football a long time, but they took the SEC national in the mid '90s and got
Yeah.
mocked for it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so funny to think back 30 years ago how, the attitude, and really even 20 years ago. I mean, you go back, the '04 Auburn team was
Yeah.
not given serious consideration at all to
Yeah.
play USC for the national title.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
so, a lot's changed.
a question for you is college football in the '70s, and somebody that I'm looking to bring on the show, Keith Donovan, hopefully here soon, who's I think a great historian for ESPN and college football.
Missing ring.
Talks about the missing ring. Talks about the television aristocracy in the '70s, and growing up in Memphis. We've always known about Oklahoma because a guy named Buddy Leak played at Oklahoma with Billy Vessels and Bud Wilkinson in the '50s, and Buddy's freshman year, he came on the scene with about 942 yards, 52 backfield, Southern Fried Sooner. So we followed Oklahoma, and they were one of those aristocracy teams. So was Texas and Ohio State, Michigan. That story Ryan Higgins told this morning, buddy, about being on the sidelines when Woody Hayes threw the punch in the Clemson game.
I watched it live.
Oh, shit. Yeah. David, were you covering back then?
No, I was 14 years old. I was watching it too, buddy, when he did it. I, couldn't believe. I'm like, he punched him.
Yeah. What's his name? What's the guy's name?
Oh God!
I used to know that.
It was a Friday night, though. I remember that.
I used to be able to be my favorite trivia. Who'd he punch? And I can't remember it. I'm too old to remember it myself. Yeah, so there's a lot of great lore. What I want to get to about your conversation, Rob, was Ron Higgins. I don't think you know Ron Higgins. Ron Higgins is one of the last real colorful Southeastern Conference or SEC.
Yeah,
the son of the former SID at the LSU, and a really gifted writer. He's one of the last old school guys, and you want to hear him rail on about these press conferences, how you can't get access to press boxes. The difference is somebody just whining and knowing. Ron knows the drill.
Yeah.
His dad, ran the press box, and they had a really good show this morning talking about that very thing. And you hear Ron talk. Well, these people think they are. So it's almost like it's so far over the hill, no one talks about it anymore, David. That ship has sailed. We're not going to get in the locker rooms. And he said, he goes and talks to kids and says, do you know I used to actually be able to go to the locker of the player and actually interview them?
Yeah.
What? You didn't have a big press conference, put the logo up there? Anyway.
Yeah. The corporate logo. Yeah.
Corporate logo, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, he's right. And you got he said some 19-year-old kid is standing over there going, you don't have to answer that question.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's like, just, I agree with him.
Yeah. How would you like that, Dave?
Yes. Please, the problem for us old media folks is I don't know if the fans care, because the fans, I think they do know what they're missing versus what they used to get, but I don't think they care enough. And so that's why the power structure's been able to get away with this. The fact of the matter is the college football coaches are the most powerful people on their campuses, and they can override the local media and the national media and all that. And so, we don't get what we used to get. I mean, I've been in Florida 25 years. What you used to be able to get in the late 90s and early 2000s from Canes, Gators, and Knowles. We stopped Bobby Bowden's bus from leaving the swamp one year until Bobby got off the bus and did an interview. Okay. We had no problem after a Florida game, getting Spurrier at the podium and then going in the locker room and talking to everybody we want to talk to.
Yeah.
Okay. It was no problem. And you could literally say to somebody, don't let Hicks leave. I got to talk to him, and they would hold them up and say, hey, Fort Myers wants to talk to you. It's different now. It is, there's more media, but there's less access.
I just think it's refreshing because that ship has sailed so long ago with me, I don't even think about it. But it's nice that Ron holds a grudge. I mean, he holds that grudge. He'll forevermore hold that grudge, and he's not going to get off that rock. He's going to hang it. I thought he was delightful.
Charlie Bauman, by the way, was the
That is
Clemson
Charlie Bell.
linebacker.
That's correct. Good job. Did you Google it? Yeah, you did.
I did. I
Charlie
looked it up.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I knew Charlie. I couldn't remember Bauman.
I
By
thought
the way,
Charlie
I was
too.
13. I was 13, not 14.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking Charlie Waters, who played at Clemson, but that was another. But it was Charlie Bauman. Wow.
Charlie Waters told me the greatest story about Terry Bradshaw, my friend, and about how we're talking about how you see somebody and you think they're special. Charlie said he was getting on the plane from Texas. Remember the old college all-star game, guys?
Oh, yeah.
He was going to change planes. I think he said, I believe New Orleans, I forget where, and or Dallas. And he says he's sitting back there. He sees a guy get on with a cowboy hat on. All right. He looks up and he sees this guy. He says, "This guy's somebody. I know he's got to be somebody. He's going to be one of those guys. The way he carried himself, I knew he was a star. You know, I always thought it was interesting in comparison. And it is true. There are some people who do carry themselves that way, David. You know some.
Well, to change quick sidebar here, did you see Aaron Boone, the manager of the Yankees, over the weekend in between games of a doubleheader in which Caitlin Clark showed up at Yankee Stadium before game one and was in the clubhouse and was on the field talking to the Yankees. And Boone said, "You should have seen our players. They were starstruck." And he looked at everybody and said, "And we're the New York Yankees."
Yeah.
Okay. And we were starstruck. And, Aaron Judge and Juan Soto were like, "Can I get my picture taken with her?" Okay. Yeah. Go up and ask her. I mean,
Juan Soto, who had 3 home runs today, by the way.
right. And then, but Boone said, some people have a magnetism.
Yeah.
They just have it.
Well,
and he said that young lady is impressive.
Yeah. Another one on that same level was when Spurrier, when Bradshaw was doing the game at the Super Bowl, the year that Lady Gaga was the singer, whatever year that was. Bradshaw told me this story. She was having a press conference downstairs, and Terry just sort of accidentally wandered into it. And she had just said, she's from Pittsburgh, and she said, "My mother always had a crush on Terry Bradshaw." She didn't know he was in the room, right there, So Terry jumped up and said something. And he said, and he saw her later that night. He said, "You talk about a star," he said, "she is a megastar. You can see it when you're around her, you feel it, and she is an unbelievable singer." Anyway, we digress. We talk about that. So anyway, I just thought it was kind of refreshing to drag out some old school things. I know that Rob likes to do this once in a while and talk about things that used to be. I still complain about it, okay? Every now and then, curmudgeon stuff, dude, right? Tell you what, you're going to make a great curmudgeon.
Oh, there's no doubt. I've been practicing for a generation now. I mean,
you perfected it all.
I mean, I have to admit, Rob, he doesn't look old enough. I mean, you got to go gray.
Yeah, he's old school in his mind. He is old school.
He may be an old soul and old school, but he looks too damn young to come off as a curmudgeon.
Well, the funny thing is that we try to focus on the history, the traditions, and the heroes. And you think about what we watched on TV coming up and getting to do a lot of college weekends. After you've been in college a while, you tell your date, "I'll be over there after the game. We'll go out." You work for ESPN or CBS on a Saturday. We'd have to be over there about 6. And if it was a night game, it's about 12 or 1 o'clock. Because I would stick around and volunteer to do shit work, okay? Carrying, 100-pound cable from the truck down to the field.
Sure.
I remember standing in 1987 on the field next to Emmitt Smith when he was a freshman. And Emmitt was visibly, Auburn won that game, I think 29-7. And just, you're down there on the field, how quiet it can be. It's kind of like it's darkest before dawn. And the TV people, and I thought Brent Musburger was always cool because he would always play flag football when he got there with the crew, whatever football, that was at Jordan Hare. But those TV people, what goes in, 64 cameras, So fade to 3, 6. You got stuff in the can, whatever. If people, I wish there would be a documentary on what it takes to produce a college football game. It starts about Wednesday and it finishes sometime early Sunday morning, and it's fascinating.
I think people would like it.
Oh, hell yeah,
And
they
you're
would.
right. The equipment trucks show up on Wednesday and they start running the cables late Wednesday or early Thursday. And and you've got the crew, and then you've got also the producer and the director, and then the production meetings on Friday with the opposing teams. Some teams are a lot more accommodating than others. Now, first off, teams don't even practice the way they used to. Like you used to as the announcers. Like when I first started with Gary could always fly into town Thursday morning and there'd be a really good Thursday afternoon practice from the home team. Now, a lot of times there's a walkthrough on Friday and everybody practices in the morning now. Okay, which is forcing the announcing crew to get into town Wednesday night if they want to come to a practice. Okay, it's very difficult to get the visiting team. They don't even do a walkthrough anymore at the stadium on a Friday afternoon. They go straight to their hotel. They don't want to meet with the media, even though, it's a 4-hour infomercial for them, really. I mean, but I think people would find it fascinating. Okay, it could be done, and I think people would enjoy it. It'd be interesting if we could, like a Hard Knocks, if we would air some of the stuff that gets said in production meetings that is not meant to go on the air, but is background.
I mean,
Is it possible Tim Tebow is 37 years old? Is that true?
Well, think about it. Do you think when he was a freshman that he just turned, if his birthday's in mid-August, that he turned 19 before his first game? If so, that's 18 years ago. So yeah, that makes sense to me.
Wow. Strange.
I mean, he either was a very young high school senior, 17 his whole year, and he turned 18, or he was 18 his whole senior year, and he turned 19 right before he started playing for the Gators. So I believe it.
Okay. Speaking of great stories about interviews, Rob, you told a great one today about Bear Bryant.
Yeah, that was cool. When we were kids, it started in like 75 or 76. We were down at the beach in Destin, and my dad left. We would stay like 2 weeks at a time, and he was doing a bunch of work in Tuscaloosa. And that following December, Alabama played UCLA in the Liberty Bowl, and it was about 9 degrees. And Coach Sam Bailey, who was really the AD, he ran it, although Coach Bryant was in name. We got field passes to that game. So that week, 2 of my friends went over to practice where Alabama was practicing and snuck on the practice field. They'd put a tower in for Coach Bryant. He had to have a traveling tower at Memphis. I think Logan Young supplied that. It was pretty fun. He's up in the tower. Rob and Clay, I mean, they called me right when they did it, snuck on the practice field. And the security people were chasing him, and Coach Bryant was on the bullhorn and said, hold it. Came down from the tower, went over, gave him a hug, put his arms around him, took pictures, signed autographs, and let him stay on the field for the rest of practice and said, they're my guests. I mean, that was pretty cool, I mean, and I'm an Auburn guy saying that. But, and I think about these connections that we have. I'm friends with Pat Dye Jr. One of his first clients was Emmitt Smith. I mean, it's just, and he's gone on to represent over 500 guys, but Emmitt Smith is a rock star. I mean, and I think about, watching, I've watched Florida because I'm an Auburn grad and I've been a fan all my life. I miss that rivalry. And I've got 2 documentaries I want to see produced, David, if you'll do it. One is called Deadline, about beat writers hitting that deadline in the press box late on a Saturday night. And the other one is Fade to 3, what goes on in those production trucks to make a college football game reality. The appreciation and the respect that I have for people in that business is off the charts. Because without that, to tell that story, we don't know what we know, and we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, all right, good stuff. Now I'll let you guys have a final word, and I'll go here and do my last commercial, go to bed, and sleep like an old guy. Get up tomorrow and do the same thing. And so your show was great today, Rob. David, what was the highlight of your show today?
Well, I mean, the season is so close we can touch it. We're like bulldogs foaming at the mouth. So, we talking a lot of football, needless to say. A little bit of NASCAR. We're still waiting. And they finally made the decision a few hours ago about what they were going to do at the end of that Richmond race. But I do just want to put a bow on what you were talking about. That I had done 20 years of live television as a local sports anchor when I started working side by side with Gary Danielson. And I had done live broadcasts, not only live shots, but I had broadcast some live games for local television. So I'm used to people talking in my ear. And, I think, come on, I know live TV. This isn't going to overwhelm me. The first 15 minutes of our first game, which, by the way, you're talking about Tebow. It was Urban and Tebow in 2006 in prime time at Neyland against Tennessee, and Florida rallied in the fourth quarter to win 21-20, and Tebow with some big fourth down conversions, and, we all knew his name at the end of that game, etc. But I was mouth agape and speechless for the first 10 to 15 minutes of that live broadcast. I mean, Gary kept looking over, waiting for me to contribute something. And I was like, wow, this must be what it's like in air traffic control trying to land airplanes. This is amazing. I mean, I've got 3 and 4 voices in my head. I'm used to one. If all is breaking loose, maybe you'd hear a second. I mean, and I'm like, how are Vern and Gary spitting sentences with people just yelling like this in their ear? I mean, so I do wish people, it could be done. I think, unfortunately, the whole deadline thing, that time has come and gone, unfortunately. But I do think that it could be done behind the scenes. I wish every fan who sits on their couch, because they say, well, how do these dumb blankety blanks, how did they miss that? And what I would love to do is take them to a live broadcast, and 10 minutes into it, they'll realize, oh, now I see how they missed it. Look at what's going on here. So it's crazy. It's like cooking jambalaya for 3.5 hours. It's just everything.
And what happened? I was a spotter one time in 1990, Doak Campbell Stadium, Florida State, LSU. It was like an 11 o'clock game. Bob Neal and Tim Foley. And Bob Neal used to keep a big gulp, like a 32-ounce drink, right in between him and Tim Foley. And I got excited after a big play, I knocked his cup over all over his stuff. And Bob Neal took his hand and just swiped it. And during the break, he goes, young man, you just act like nothing happened. I went, I am so sorry. And he goes, it's okay. And then there was that big fight on the field. But I'm telling you, I have my friend Logan Young. He talks about, his dad. But you go over to the house at night. And I'm not kidding you, because we all knew he married my friend's little sister. My friend Logan did. You go to the house, and there's Barry Switzer, Johnny Majors, Jimmy Johnson, Brother Oliver living in the guest house in the back. I mean, when he coached the Showboats. I mean, the stories, and going to Big John Grazzani's, Coach Bryant had that side room in there back before social media. But the TV, the power of what we get out of what y'all do. And I like Gary Danielson. I've talked to him at media days several times, goes out of his way. At least he did with me, coming up and talking to me.
I've always thought Gary was a real pro.
Yeah.
I got to cut you off, Rob.
I know. David, I am glad to be on here with you, man. You are. I got to get you on my show if you'll come on.
Sure.
All right, here we go.
I mean, I love this stuff.
Very
time
quickly.
I have Rob on, he takes one of my guests.
I know we're pressed for time. So early on, Vern and Gary, Vern liked to drink Diet Coke during the games. And Vern had a stretch. He had literally 4 games in a row. He spilled a Diet Coke during the game, all over the boards and everything. And so we tried to somehow put the Diet Coke and put big things of tape around it. He still messed it up. And finally, after about 4 weeks in a row, we bought him a big sippy cup like he was 3. And we put his Diet Coke in a sippy cup and put it in front of him, and he just glared at us. And we're like, hey, man, come on, 4 weeks in a row. Come on now.
How about it?
Oh,
How about his hot dogs?
Well, and then, Katie was our stage manager, and Katie always had that, could get the stains out because Vern would mustard on the hot dogs, and at halftime he'd get mustard on his tie, and we'd be scrubbing his tie, getting the mustard out.
I
And
love it.
always had 2 hot dogs. Very good, right?
Always that. There, we had a booth. Okay, runner is what it was called, and she would make $150, and literally her job was to make sure that Vern had 2 hot dogs with the proper condiments sitting next to him when we got to halftime. She got $150 every week. That was her job.
I'll take it.
Totally great seats.
75 a dog.
You guys get a lot of kudos here. And Pauline Gross, who said, by the way, she knows Charlie Bauman and his brother Keith. All right. She's on and she says, buddy, I believe your 2 guests have much in common. Please bring them back together.
Sure.
Wow. How about that? Well,
That's very nice of her. I thanks for letting me come on. I appreciate it always.
Thanks for being on. Appreciate it. David, we'll be back. Well, you're off next week, I think.
No.
Oh, 2 weeks. 2 weeks, yeah.
No, I'm doing next week. Yeah, the last week of the month. That's questionable. That's up in the air.
Okay.
I'll try. I'll try.
No, you do. My guys, how long have we been doing this, David?
A long time. Close to a decade.
A long time. Always love having you on, brother. Good to see you again. And Rob, thank you. You always bring a little levity to things and a lot of information. And he's got one of those. What did Howard Cosell say? Who said? No, it was Danny Don said that photographic memory of Cosell is going to be the death of us all.
Cosell.
And that's Rob. He's got one too. Guys, thank you so much. Great job.
You're welcome always.
Take care, Rob.
You too. Nice to meet you.
Be good.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. All right, folks. We're going to get out of here and tell you about our sponsors of the program. Renstar Medical Research being the main one now. They've been with me for a long time. I don't know, 7, 8 years. And they do some really excellent things in their community. And even as they weren't a sponsor, you should know about them because they're interested enough in your health, if you're in North Central Florida, to help do research that would be applicable to you in this regard. That they do clinical trials and they get people to sign up for them, whatever. I don't know what the parameters are, but they have different reasons for, let's say, one on shingles or let's say one on migraine headaches, let's say whatever. They do all these clinical trials and they get the results. And so somebody gets the placebos, somebody gets the medication, you don't know who. And then at the end, they see how it fared. All that data gets rolled into one and gets sent to a biomedical company and to find out what kind of treatments that we need. They also are good people. I know both Mary Brantley, the wife of Scott, and Joe Sorrentino, the father of Joey, who played for Urban Meyer. And they're great citizens, they're great people, and they really care. They want you to know how important clinical trials are, not just to them, but to you and our community. So check them out, Renstar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. We enjoyed bringing it to you. We have such wonderful guests on this show who bail us out. At one point tonight, I thought, well, I don't know what I'm going to have. Ali's not going to be here. And so I'll just call Rob. But we just have people that are willing to step in and fill the void, and we appreciate it. Thank you. So having said that, folks, have a good night and a better tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.